And when it comes to commodity, that is about freeing people from the shackles of interest, making sure that they are able to invest and at the same time steadily feel comfortable that there's something real in hand rather than something they don't understand. Because that's the biggest problem with investments. A lot of people don't make money because they don't understand the investments. And if I can bring commodity to everyone and let them feel like it is something easy to understand, then financially you are safe. The part of youth, we are empowering them. The part of children is a feeder towards making them better thinkers, eventually better voters, better thinkers in the aspect of politics and choosing your leaders in Malaysia.
The following is a long open conversation with Sheikh Muhammad Faizal Shah, co-founder of Commodi-T, the first interest-free Islamic bank on the blockchain. We got the chance to sit and talk about many topics like what is Islamic FinTech, what is the purpose of a debate society in the APAC region, and how are the tradings of commodities in the age of blockchain. During the recording, there were moments that the lights were not making the video to follow very easily. Nevertheless, the audio persevered, and brighter lights came to our rescue later on. I want also to take a moment to share a message to the brothers and sisters who have been observing the Ramadan to wish a happy Hari Raya Al-Fitr, and may the festival of the sweets sweeten your hearts among your loved ones. This is On the Lawn with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe and to contribute to the channel on the description below. And now, your featured presentation.
So, do you want me to just look there or do we?
We can also look like that, and we can always start discussing. It's only Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only Tuesday.
You lost your breath and it's just Tuesday.
A lot of things going on during the week. Going to one place to another, just meeting other people. There was a semiconductor meeting.
Busy man.
I had to be busy. There are only a few days you can do this. Well, I guess we can start.
Yeah, sure.
3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Long with FVR. Today we have Faizal.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to sit with you because after so many times, so many talks, finally we got the opportunity to learn about your journey, about what has been your fascination with the world of technology. And first things first, people want to know who are you and which is your background. So can you tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure, no problem. I'll try to keep this as short as I can. I do not really have a very conventional background. I have spent time in different spaces. So I've been in the startup space, I've been in the public policy space, I've been in the NGO space, and now in the corporate space. So I've had about 10 years of going through these spaces. I had my own startup. It was an edtech company focused on educating, training youth and children in the art of public speaking and debates in the language of English. And I was thinking about trying to move those skills online and eventually scale across the globe. Unfortunately, there was not a very easy thing to do, especially with the fact that when I was ahead of the curve, I had to compete with the likes of Coursera and so on, and then COVID-19 happened. So I didn't really have the resources to continue. That's when I came to business school. Prior to that, I was in an NGO. It's called Migrant 88. I spent time there as a strategy consultant and then also a field officer. So, I used to consult them on how to go to media companies and sort of like share their stories so that people would learn about the current issues pertaining to labor abuses and labor rights in Malaysia, not just for the locals but also the foreigners. I also had the privilege and opportunity to follow a team and be part of that team to go undercover in many cases in factories and try to get information and data, do some research, qualitative and also quantitative, mostly qualitative data gathering, and speaking to victims of abuse. So I've seen all kinds of things where I've seen laborers being chained to their beds, not getting paid. A company withholding their passport is probably the least amount of danger they can put a foreign labor worker in. So I've seen quite a number of things there. I've also spent time in the public policy space. I used to serve as the special officer to the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. One Azizah, one Ismail was the Deputy Prime Minister at that time for about a year. I spent a lot of time in the space related to children, women, and community development. At that time, I also went to the United States for a bit. I had a YCL program, the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative program, and it was particularly focused on child protection. There was an incident in the debate space at that time that we had the national debate team debaters, being sexually abused. So since I was a leader in that space, and I had my own academy and that tech startup, as I mentioned earlier, we had to take steps to make sure that students that come for debate competitions and public speaking competitions go through some form of safety standard, right? And that's something I worked on there. Aside from that, I also consulted her on many issues related to youth. Then I also spent time, I'll just stop there. There's quite a bit of things I've done there, so feel free to pick on those.
Come on, that's the purpose of having this episode, because we want to learn about you. So, those are parts of a journey that I believe started in Malaysia.
Yes.
In which part of Malaysia?
I stay in Kuala Lumpur. Most of my life I grew up in Petaling Jaya, and Petaling Jaya was a bit more laid back, not as jammed heavy and jam packed like Kuala Lumpur. But those were my early years. Sometime in Bangsa when I was a child, and then as a teenager in Petaling Jaya, section 17 to be exact. And when I was a little older, I was in Gombak for my undergraduate. I went to university there, and then over the past 6-7 years, I've been in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah.
You mentioned Petaling Jaya, Bansar, Gombak. Those are like kind of boroughs from the Kuala Lumpur Federation, or those are like usually names? I'm talking from my naivety, because I usually see those names and those are stations, but they mean something else as well, right?
Yeah. So Bangsa is in Kuala Lumpur. It's sort of like a district, if I'm not mistaken. And then Petaling Jaya is part of Selangor. It's part of the district of Petaling. And I currently now stay in Shah. That's also in Selangor. Okay. Shah is quite far from ASB. It's about an hour on a good day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite jammed up.
And given that you did that undergrad experience there, which was the motivations to study what you did?
Okay, good question actually. My undergraduate studies, I studied in International Islamic University, Malaysia. I think previously there was another podcast, Dr. Hadija, right? Yeah, she was also from International Islamic University, Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we were there together, but we never met each other. And obviously.
Time out.
Yeah.
What do you mean you never met Hadija? And wait a second, really?
I don't know. I was quite popular. She probably hid from everyone.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, and I did political science there, and I specialized in philosophy and international relations. The reason why I did that was because I was an avid debater. I was a competitive debater and public speaker, and it started in the days where my sister used to debate for another university in Malaysia called UITM, and I used to follow her for debate training because that's what she used to do as a club activity. And then many years of doing that, I ended up in an opposing university. They're actually UITM and IIUM. UIE basically is University Islam Antarabangsa. IIUM is the English abbreviation, International Islamic University Malaysia. So they were competitors with each other, so I ended up in the other competitor. And I was the president of my debate club. Lots of things related to economy, economics of the world, political, geopolitical issues, social issues. All those were things I was learning in my course. And it helped that I also did philosophy because I was able to understand concepts, where they came from, how they developed over time, because you got to peek into the minds of scholars and philosophers to understand why these concepts are important to us now. Of course, there was a unique thing about International Islamic University, Malaysia. They imbued the Islamization of knowledge, right? So we would speak about scholars from the West, but they would also cover scholars in the Muslim world. So it gave us a very balanced perspective, and we sometimes knew where these concepts came from. Was it from the Muslim empire? Was it from a different empire? So, as a Muslim growing up there, I think retrospectively I appreciate it a lot more. But when I was there, you tend to focus on the popular things. Everybody knows John Locke, or Thomas Hobbes, or social contract, but those concepts were also in the works of Islamic scholars throughout the ages, but we never really knew. So going there unlocked that knowledge for us.
That's fascinating. The world of competitive debating. So I need to ask you, how do you win a competitive debate round? How many rounds to determine a winner or things like that?
It's an interesting question because they're different formats, right? So I'll briefly explain. So you have the Asian parliamentary format, which is 3-on-3. You give 3 speeches in your team, and the opponents give 3 speeches too. And then we close up with a reply speech, which is slightly shorter than the usual speeches. Those speeches are about 7 minutes long. The usual speeches 1, 2, and 3. The reply speeches are about 4 minutes long. So they take turns going from Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader of Opposition, Government Whip, Opposition Whip, Opposition Reply Speaker, Government Reply Speaker. That takes about an hour just for a debate. You have about 30 minutes to prepare. You don't have access or resources aside from the books or notes that you've prepared on. So we have something called fact sheets. We take notes on a particular issue, what's going on there, what are the important examples to know. So that's one format. Then we have the British parliamentary format, where it's 2 versus 2 versus 2 versus 2. So there are 4 teams. So the World Debating Championships uses that particular format. There's also an Asian's version, Asian debate competition with the BP format. So all these formats, I don't want to bore everyone else, but it teaches you how to work in different kinds of teams, because some teams you have 3 people, some teams you just have 2. It's a lot easier to win a round if you have 2 speakers to manage. So it's a lot more difficult to win a round with 2 speakers in a team, because there are 8 speakers with 4 competing interests. It's easier to win an Asian parliamentary debate because it's either you win or lose. The BP format, you get points, right? So the winner gets 3, second place gets second, third place gets 1, and the loser gets 0. So BP is all about, British parliamentary format is all about getting points, right? And then eventually you break out to the knockout stages. So there's a filtering process where everyone meets each other on a power matching system. The teams on the equal points, similar points with each other. Eventually you go to the breakout rounds, quarterfinals, octofinals, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. So depending on the type of tournament, that will determine the kind of teams or the number of teams in those rounds. So to win a round, it's really just about 3 things. One is you need to present a case that is in the spirit of the motion. So the debate motion is really about an evergreen topic would be this house would ban smoking, right? And everyone has an opinion about this. The idea is about making sure that you have a case that is coherent towards that motion. So if you're the government side, you're supposed to convince everyone else that's listening that smoking should be banned. And how would you go about doing this? Then it comes to your argumentation. These would be your reasons. In a competitive debating setting, we would call it argumentation. But between you and me, it's just, here are a few reasons why it's bad or good. And then when you're done with that, you need to respond to the people who you're listening to. Because if you don't, then you're speaking to yourself. You're not speaking to an opponent. There's no discussion happening.
That's really educative. Now,
Thank
I
you.
believe during your journey in those competitions, you may have seen some debates that were more personal than technical.
Yeah.
So how to handle those debates that sometimes are more passionate than constructive?
Oh, I've had some really cool experiences with this one, right? International Islamic University, Malaysia, going into a round where we're defending the state of Israel, right? So we understand what's happening to Muslims in Palestine, but we are in a debate round where we're supposed to talk about why it's okay for Israel to exist, for example. And it may be something where personally I disagree with, but the fact that it trains you to think about ideas and argumentations or reasons beyond just what your personal preferences are, it puts you in a position where you are able to master critical thought, and you do not get personal when you speak to someone about ideas. There's a pro and con to this, right? So debates is not just all about the good things you get. There are many things that are bad that you get from debating also. You speak to someone, you sometimes forget. When I was younger, this was a big problem I had. You sometimes forget that you're in a conversation, you're not in a debate. So you're not there to win the conversation, you're there to discuss an idea. So when you're younger, you're trained to win, you're trained to do well. So sometimes you forget that doing well includes speaking to someone and them leaving the conversation feeling comfortable and happy that they spoke to you. In a debate round where both teams know what they're doing, they don't leave with personal affliction where they're upset. But when you speak to your sister, your mother, your family, and then you go like, oh, I got to win this argument, you forget that you're not in a debate. So these are some of the cons that are not necessarily good, right? It takes a long time for you to develop and mature your thought process and how you communicate with others. In fact, I would be the first to say, I'm open to vulnerable situations, and I would be the first to say that I think only in the early stages of my MBA here, I finally was able to detach myself from that debater identity. And, it was not easy because you do competitive debate training every week, 2-3 times a day, 3-4 hours for years. And then I also had an academy where I was coaching students for debates and public speaking, right? So sometimes it was difficult to switch off. And
Yeah, it's really fascinating dynamic because one thing is a debater and the other thing is a coach.
Yeah.
So how those two coexist or how those two switch roles?
This is a good question. You have an experience as a debater, and then sometimes you're successful as a debater. And success here is perhaps defined as, during my time, being able to break in the open category of the World Championships would be success, right? Because it's very tough. You have lots of subconscious racial bias against teams from Asia because people assume they can't speak English, and they make the mistake of thinking that because there is a slight language barrier that people are not as smart because they can't think or speak in English.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a problem, right? And a lot of teams in Asia don't necessarily get the credit that they deserve. Over the past 5 to 8 years, Asian teams have done really well. They've got to the World Semi-Finals, the World Finals, and if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago, a team from Bangladesh won the World Championships, right? It's all about visibility and then going to different circuits and then getting to know the debaters. As there's a political side where you know the judges, they're friends with you, and then they are also they understand where you come from. This is, I think, the part that I don't really like as much, because you should win on merit, but sometimes knowing the person also helps you sort of the person defends you more rather than them just not being in your corner at all. And I think that's a difficult situation for a lot of people. But just to answer your question, a lot of people are successful, but they cannot replicate that success as a coach because they are two separate skills. I would say that I was pretty successful in the local and regional circuit, not the global circuit. But as a coach, I was extremely successful. Like as a debater and a public speaker, I won about 20 championships. And I got to maybe about 25 or 30 finals, something like that. And as a coach, my teams got to about 30 championships and we won about 25. And this is purely with the coaching style of getting the best out of the students. So I think when you are a coach, you need to realize that it's no longer about you. It's not about your performance. Your performance stops at the point of where they start debating in the competition. So there's a lot of other things you have to manage: their personality, their characters, their ego, because they're in a team. And then you also have to manage the fact that sometimes they have anxiety attacks. Sometimes they come from homes that are unstable. Sometimes they are broken homes. So they got to feel that they're safe. Because for someone to do something where the best of them comes out, the best version of themselves is showcased, they need to be in a comfortable environment that they can showcase that. The environment has to sort of bring that out. And I think I spent a lot of time learning from people who are younger than me and also older from me on how to manage personalities, how to, when do you pull someone aside and say, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, this is how you collaborate, and two separate skill sets. So a lot of debaters who are successful, they try to become a coach. They try for a while and then they stop because there's a different level of commitment that they need, because the commitment is no longer to themselves only, it's to the success of others. Yeah.
And I believe, and an unfair analogy will be for somebody who practices football, then all of a sudden they have to retire and become coach if they choose to do so. Here, as a debater, when was your call to become coach? I mean, as a coach, can you begin practice again? How are the dynamics?
Okay, I was in my final year of competitive debating, and debate clubs always are political. There are favorites and there are people who are not. I was a senior that was not a favorite to be in the first team, but I was first team material. And I ended up being in the second team where I was coaching and sort of like debating with juniors. I think that was the first time I realized that I could do well with juniors if I coach them. I invest time in other people. And we went to that Asian Championships, and the first team made it to the semi-finals, and we lost to the eventual champions in the first knockout round. Um, but nobody expected us to make it that far. It was someone in their first year and a half, and I was in my third year, going to my fourth year onwards. Then I realized that the investment in other people brings me happiness, and I was like, perhaps I should start coaching a school and seeing if I could impact the lives of other students, younger ones. And I started off in MRSM Trola. It was a school in a little further up north in Perak. And I used to go on the weekends. It was a 90-minute drive. I would drive there, spend the whole day there doing a workshop, teaching them. And eventually, one school became 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Many schools in KL and Selangor. I think the number one thing that was very clear to me amongst my peers was that the students I coached were all equally good. Usually, when you have multiple schools, I was probably one of the few who had multiple schools. Usually, one coach will coach one school, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I would have about 3 or 4, and they're all equally as good as each other. And a lot of people realize that you could focus on more schools if your program that you've designed is well designed. And that's when I decided that coaching was something I was very passionate about and I was doing for many years. That's when I opened my tech company, my edutech company, and we started with in-person on-site classes first, and then eventually I was moving online. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that you were investing in other people, I cannot help but thinking about the typical finance professionals that they only seek for a return of investment, or the consultants who usually ask the so what. Now, in your case, what made you realize that investing in people can bring fruition?
I think so. I come from a background where my parents are no longer alive, so I lost them when I was very young. And I realized that growing up with two elder sisters, they were also learning along the way in how to help raise a younger brother. And I think a very large part of me realized that I was in a position and I had the capacity and I had the opportunity and knowledge, including the skills, to help another person. I am of the opinion that you are not there by accident. You are there because it's by design. You put in the effort. As a Muslim, I believe Allah's placed me where I'm supposed to be. The question that I have in my head then is, when I die and I'm in the grave, God's gonna ask me, you had the skills, you had the capacity, you had the knowledge. Do you not think? Did you not think that maybe you had the responsibility to disseminate and help others? So that is a very strong guiding principle for me. I feel very strongly towards empowering other people and helping them. So there are two different parts here. One is one is removing them from an environment that is where they are disempowered, so they can try to compete. The other one is helping them get better. So it's sort of like, how do we normalize your situation to be better, and then how do we get you from version 1 to version 2 and whatever versions you can go on after that. I saw this very young, very early, and I saw this in the students that came because they were young and they were looking for knowledge. And I remembered that I was younger, and I would seek knowledge. So there was a point in time where I also broke sort of from the mold of debating culture. University debaters debate only exclusively with their university. But because I had gone through some challenges in my debate club, I decided that I needed to expand my horizon and debate with other people. So I was perhaps one of the first Malaysian debaters at that time. It's very taboo. People didn't do this because they expected you to debate for your university. I would debate with other people from other universities in open tournaments because there was a rise of open tournaments at that time. And I would go and I would think like, this person is younger than me and this person is so much better than me. What can I learn from this person? So I used to go and debate with multiple people from across the Malaysian debate scene, and that allowed me to see very different coaching styles, very different preparation for debate styles, and how they dealt with losses and wins, right? So that ended up helping me sort of figuring out, hey, you know what? I have different perspectives. There are different people are unique, students are unique. I can apply different perspectives to different unique students. And that's sort of how, this happened.
It reminds me how George St. Pierre, after winning his first $1 million, he realized that he needed, and obtaining the UFC championship, he realized that he needed to go other places to learn. Like going to Thailand to learn Muay Thai or going to Brazil to learn Capoeira. That's how he extended his reign as champion. Your story in the competitive debater scene resembles that because you decided to go beyond that comfort zone and learn from the other competitors as well.
Well, that's true, but when you say beyond the comfort zone, no pun intended here. It's true. There was a point in time where it was very uncomfortable. The reason why I stopped debating was because of that incident where one of the competing sort of organizations who used to train the national debate team, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that trainer molested these students, and I've been in this space from the time where I watched my sister as a spectator, all the way up to debater, champion debater, coach, champion coach, and then villain. I became the villain at the end because I went to the Ministry of Education and said, these are things that are happening. We need to legislate or find ways to offer protection for these children. We need some rules and regulations. You need to guide us on how to do this. Some people didn't like this because they thought there was a direct attack on their competitor, when in reality this conversation was essentially about protecting children, not just at that point, but moving forward, right? So, I had to go through smear campaigns. Some people tried to make it look as if I had sexually harassed students and, all kinds of stuff. And it became a bit of a kangaroo court, right? So I eventually had to seek legal advice because these companies don't have jurisdiction to do any of these things, but they're behaving as if they're the police, right? And they're behaving as if they have authority, and they don't. So ultimately, the core conversation is this. This is when I realized slowly that this space is a very dangerous space because the part of public speaking and debates, specifically debates, there is a lot of exposure. Now, when I say exposure, I mean like to ideas, to content, to subject matter, and that's good usually to expand someone's mind. But what we don't realize as adults is that when children have exposure to these contents, it is also traumatic. They don't realize it. A lot of parents don't know this either. A lot of the debaters sometimes don't necessarily have the best interest or the best behaviors being a coach. So I look back and look at the Islamic scholars that we have. There is something called the hadith, right? People who share the sayings, the doings, and of what the Prophet used to do. That's called the Sunnah. And the people who narrate these stories, these are people with very high level of accountability, very high levels of piousness, that the society around them believes that these people are good, and if we listen to them, we can trust what they say. And then they have a chain of narration until today, and that is called the sanad, right? So a little bit of Islamic history here, but the point I'm trying to make is the coach and the person that you have that you look up to is the person that's going to mold your behavior and your personality. It's just the exposure you have to that person. So if your coach is someone who's saying, hey, let's meet at the bar, let's have a drink, or they drink and you don't, and they're smoking in front of you, and when they have a debate round and it's over, they go to the stairwell, the coach is smoking and you're not. These little things add up, and that becomes a problem for the child because children mimic. As much as we want to say that they don't, that they have a mind of their own, they do, but they start somewhere. That subconscious imagery, or that it becomes conscious later, that hey, my coach is successful and popular, he does this and that, if it's accepted with this person, why can't I do it? That's where the danger is. So that's how I ended up being the villain in a space where I dominated, I was good at my job, and the students until today never forget that they didn't just learn how to debate. In my academy, they learned how to be people, how to become better people, and I can take pride in that, I guess.
That's true. This reminds me also the quote from the Batman movie, The Dark Knight, that you don't live, you die like a hero, or you live long enough to become the villain.
Yeah, yeah.
So many quotes from that movie, but it's true. Like, it's always good to have the guts to say, "This is enough. This shall not happen again. What allows will continue."
Yeah.
And I'm glad that at least you took this stance, not for you, but for the people who will come after you. Because
I think there are ways to do it better. There are ways to use tact in it. I was young, right? So obviously I made mistakes. Maybe doing the right thing is good, but sometimes there is a way in how to do the right thing, right? Maybe you can say things better. You can present yourself better. These are all lessons in retrospect that you understand. And I think these things I also learned when I came to ASB. You know, this was the second master's. I did a master's in educational leadership in University of Malaya before that, and didn't get to showcase most of my skills there because it was not very challenging, but I think the class was a little quiet. So in the MBA class, you have a lot more people that come to a loggerhead with you, and then you sort of learn how to master that tact and how to get a conversation going, right?
so maybe this can be a little personal, and you can extend as much as you want. But who do you remember were the most fierce debaters during your MBA?
MBA. I don't know actually. I think I was probably the most fierce one, but there were some classes that some people stood out. A friend of mine, Timothy Asimwe, he was very quiet in class, but there was one particular class that he and I were having really good conversations. It was Professor Kevin Crow's class about ethics and business, and I generally have a very heightened level of value systems that I try to follow. So business is business. Yes, it's about money, but it's also about making sure we go about the right way in getting there. It's not always about the bottom line. It's also about, is this bottom line justified, right? In the process we took to get there. So this is in no way saying Timothy is just money. That's not it. It was just a nice conversation that we used to have conversations in private, but we were able to bring it to class. So he would disagree with things I say in relation to some of the discussions, and I would respond, and he would respond back, and we would go at it, and it wouldn't be hostile. It would be a really good discussion. So that was one of the classes I really enjoyed. Well, honestly, most of the classes, I think the first semester is quite heavy for everyone. So whenever someone like myself talks about value systems in a business school, naturally you have students that they didn't wake up one day and decide to come to an MBA because they were a social justice warrior, or because they have social impact they want to do, right? There is a line. Some people do, some people don't. Most of them don't. And to them it's about finance, about getting to a VC and doing this and doing that. So I may have come off as a distraction for them, and in reality I know for a fact that I hope that I distract them further down the road in their thoughts, because these conversations are important. An example of this would be like Facebook dialing up their advertisements targeting preteens, right? And it's legal, it's doable, but should they? That's a discussion on its own. So some things I feel like, in Professor Kevin Crow's class, we had this conversation: what's legal, what's immoral, and what's unethical or ethical. So we were going through these motions, and I thought that throughout the MBA journey, I would have these conversations in my head. We do this and we do that. For example, in a corporate finance class, for Muslims, riba, interest is haram. It's non-permissible at all. But the financial system is built on that. So I had a bit of an identity crisis, so I had to understand how it worked, right? So you don't fight with everyone, but you learn from it. So I guess at the end of the day, it's really about people stepping up and wanting to put themselves out there to talk about it. Not many did that in my class, I guess. It's online, camera is off. But I have realized that in previous cohorts, there's been there's a number of people that stood out. They would speak out, they would share. I think in a class setting it's easier, yes.
This is really a gem, because when you find out that people have the capacity to go back and forth and to discern and not fall in the trap of the emotions, but to think critically. That's when you realize you're starting to level up, and you're starting to say, they are blurry lines that we don't want to be, and they are solid lines that we know and we should talk to each other clearly, so we can at least be on a common ground. I'm happy that you were able to share this with not only me, but also the people who are watching this. Now, you mentioned that during your training, before coming to the MBA, you also did an NGO. So, as a citizen of Malaysia, how difficult is to set up your own business?
Oh, business is not very hard. I think Malaysia is one of the easiest countries to open a company at. So there are different levels to it. Of course, you have a private limited company. You also have a what do you call it? Limited liability partnerships. You basically go to. You can do it online now, by the way. If you want to open, let's just say you want to sell food at the side of the road. You want to register an enterprise, right? It's very easy. You just go there, pay 50 ringgit or 100 ringgit, set up the company, open a bank account. It's not that hard. But with regards to your conversation about the NGOs, that's tough. Opening an NGO in Malaysia is not easy because NGOs can be used as a tool to launder money, and people are not necessarily. I mean, that's global. It happens across the globe. But registering an NGO in Malaysia for us, so the NGO I worked for and the NGO I run now are not the same. So the NGO I worked for was registered as a company actually, right? A lot of NGOs register as companies because it's quite difficult to get the requirements done to register with the registrars of Society of Malaysia to open a non-government or non-profit organization. So they just register as a for-profit but never declare profit. And that's also a problem because there are selected grants that they can apply for, and most of them they can't. Only NGOs can apply for them. I run an NGO which I registered a few years ago called the Malaysian World's Debate Education Society. We source out, we select, we train, we prepare, and then we send the national Malaysian debate team to the World School Debating Championships every year. I do it with my partner Maizura. She used to be my competitor from UITM. I was from IIU when we were actively debating as competitive debaters, and then we came together to do this because we realized that with the things I mentioned earlier that happened, we needed a non-government organization to manage this. It shouldn't be parked under a for-profit organization. With that said, we registered it in 2020, in early 2020. This is before we thought COVID was going to happen, right? And there was a blessing in disguise because raising funds was not easy. So all the tournaments went online, so it became easier to attend. And so registering that took us 3 attempts because they would reject the name, they would reject the constitution, and it's difficult because there's a structure you have to follow. And if you've never done it before, you've never learned, or someone's not talked to you about it, or walked you through how to do it, you'll probably get rejected a few times. On the 3rd attempt, we got it. Yeah.
Rejection and success in times of an NGO, that's such a brave story, a story of bravery. So, given that dynamic, and that was before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, how did you sustain momentum?
Oh, this was tough. I think we realized why we did the NGO. It was because it was a new page after a period where they were victims of the previous batches of students, right? So moving forward, we thought we had a social responsibility to that community, the debate community in Malaysia, and also just to ourselves to start something new that couldn't be manipulated, and at the same time focused on the students' well-being. So we started in 2020. Since then, we've got to the quarterfinals of the World Championships, I think thrice, and we were lucky not to get to the finals last year. We're going to try and win it this year, and it's not a easy process because you have to run events to make money. So the way how we run our NGO is like a startup. We assume that there's no grant because there isn't. We assume that there's no donation, and we don't ask. We run the NGO like a startup because we create events and services so that we can sustain the organization. So it's like a business. It's a sustainably run organization. This year is a good year. We're expanding. We've made a bit of money, enough to hire someone. In fact, I just hired someone yesterday and made the announcement.
Congratulations, man.
Welcome. Thank you very much. And then, so we're moving forward. I got in the right partners. And one thing, putting it aside, whether it's an NGO or for-profit organization or whatever organization, having the right partners is something that people take for granted. Having the right partners is the recipe that you need to get right for you to do anything that you want. And I've learned the hard way from that. I had partners that didn't work out really well, and since then, whenever I do something, getting in the partners, whether they come in later or earlier, there is a process that you need to go through. You need to make sure they understand your vision and they have to be on board. I'm a person who can talk about vision, I can talk about the long term, and I can chart a pathway step by step to get there. And I think this is a strength that I have. And I've brought multiple people together to do multiple projects. So this NGO was one of it. There's another NGO called Malaysia. A couple of our MBA students from my cohort are in it. There's a blockchain Web3 organization and project I'm working on also brought people together in it. So partners, you gotta get the right one.
Now that you mention it, and I bet most people have been waiting for this as well, to give this a special word. So why blockchain? Why you put your eyes on that?
Okay, this is a good question. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually working on a project with a classmate of mine from the MBA 2022 cohort and one of my best friends from outside. Our project is called Commodi-T, right? This project is a project that is trying to build the world's first Islamic bank that does not charge riba interest on the blockchain. And what is unique about it is that we are trying to build this project using a stable coin that is pegged to gold or in the future other different commodities. So the currency that we are using will be real world asset, they call it RWAs or asset backed tokens, right? This is what we're trying to do. We are very close to the initial DEX and DAO offering at this point. We're looking at 1st of August. So we're trying to push out the information and get people to know about this project as much as we can. With a Twitter page, we'll be happy to, Fabe will share the details, I guess.
So all of a sudden you will have your Discord, your Telegram, the Twitters, the mods, and everything.
Yeah.
It sounds really powerful because an Islamic bank in the blockchain that doesn't charge interest.
Everybody keeps asking me, hey bro, if you don't charge interest, how do you make money, right? And I ask them right back, if I give you a loan of $100,000 and there's no interest, would you take it? And the answer is yes. So that's how we do it. We do it through using Islamic financial models, murabaha, mudaraba, mushakara. These are all risk sharing models. The reason why this is important is because we want to make sure that we move away from the interest-based system because it's burdensome. So I remember Professor Trewitt's class in corporate finance, right? With Professor Ellie. I think the first thing I heard there was those who don't understand interest paid and those who do collect on it. And that's a very strong sentence, very compact sentence that describes a lot of the problems in the world and a lot of the good for people who know how to collect on interest. So as a Muslim, it's very clear. The Quran, it says, riba is haram, it is non-permissible and you cannot engage in it. And there are very few options that are out there. I know some people will say this is controversial because they'll say, well, we have Islamic financing, in Malaysia you have Islamic banks and so on and so forth. It's a debate on its own where I land on the side of there's no true Islamic bank because let's say you have Maybank or you have CIMB, when they have CIMB Islamic or Maybank Islamic. Yes, in Malaysia they made it a rule that the depositors had to be new depositors coming in with new money instead of from the conventional side. But the only reason the Islamic portfolio was opened up was because the bank existed already with the conventional accounts, and they've made money there, and they're just introducing a new sort of product, right? Then you have, of course, banks like Bank Islam that charges you a profit rate, because that's what they charge in the risk sharing system, a profit rate. But it's certain. The profit rate is 4%, for example. So you take the loan and they will charge you a profit rate of 4%. So essentially in Islam, banks are not there to capitalize and make trillions of dollars. It's meant to facilitate social awareness in engaging in business, and also uplifting society in a position where when they need support and assistance to build on their ideas, banks are there. So it's more of a social component, and they play a very strong social impact rather than the usual one you see now, which is corporate social responsibility. CSR is just marketing, right? CSR is CSR. There is a social impact, but it is also like marketing. So Islamic banking is very different from that. There is a level of accountability that is placed upon institutions that have liquidity to give out liquidity in a responsible manner. You obviously have problems now with over leveraging, potential bank runs, Silicon Valley Bank being bailed out because the financial system is so stretched.
Or even the Balaji bet. I bet you already heard that one, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we can sit and talk about Islamic finance all day, but at the end of the day, we need better options, and we want to be that better option.
A little story about myself. When I was opening a bank account here in Malaysia, I'm a Catholic Christian. I go to the Easter Sunday Mass and practice more than being a Christian in a name only. I actually happen to practice another religion by helping anyone in capacity as long as I can. I remember when they offered me the product of a Islamic savings account, and I was like, wait a second, I'm a Catholic Christian. I'm allowed to have this? I'm asking.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, because you are right now as a student, right? Yeah, that's true. And then when they mentioned this, we're going to charge you 1 ringgit per year to maintain the account. So 1 ringgit is around 24 cents of dollar. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm not going to be engaging in bets. I'm not going to be engaging in using my account to fund, let's say, some other stuff or some haram things. But at the same time, extrapolating my experience to, let's say, any random person in the Americas, any Catholic Christian, they will say, oh, look at that, sounds a little too religious to me. But then when they hear that they can give you a loan with no interest, they will put difference aside, and it's like, how can we help?
Yeah, definitely.
That's the main word, because then they realize money is not an end, it's a medium to facilitate, to bring peace and harmony, to bring prosperity. It's like the wave, the tide that lifts all the boats.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you also put this little dot on the I about the so-called CSR, corporate social responsibility, or even the ESGs, because this is applicable, this is tangible.
Yeah.
You can actually make examples of this, and it's like every weekend we go to the bazaars, and you see you see the money moving.
Yeah.
And I would say that's beautiful, to be honest. When you see the money moving, elevating people's societies, bringing opportunities, that's good.
Yeah, I concur with you, and this was the driving force on. I mean, it started off with the fact that we wanted a more equitable process in the financial system, and then it became, because we started off as a fintech, and then only maybe late 2021 was when we decided, you know what, too many regulatory issues with the fintech, we'll just do it on the blockchain, right? That's not to say that we are anti-regulation. The approach that we've been taking has been to ensure that when regulators come knocking, they can access everything. It's on the blockchain. It's easily auditable, and we are trying to design a project that eventually becomes something that regulators don't see a problem with, because what's the biggest problem with the bank, right? They have to have money in the bank. And if we have assets that can properly be used to engage in financial services, then regulators are more likely to be kind to us and say, this is a good idea, let's support. That's far down the road, perhaps a few years from now, but we had to start somewhere. So we've been investing about 2 years of our time in this, very minimal money, because we've been smart about it. We've built our white paper, we've written it out, we've shared it with people. I have spent time going around Malaysia with regards to blockchain related events, so I know a couple of people, quite a number of them. In fact, we're trying to set up something here in ASB. We're trying to launch like the Malaysian blockchain hub. We're trying to work on it. There are some players interested in taking up space, and I'm all for coming up with innovative ways to do business. So one of the reasons why blockchain, so your first question earlier was why blockchain, why my eye on it, right? So this, I guess, would answer what you see with regards to cryptocurrency now and NFTs is a very small subset of how blockchain can be used. Crypto assets or cryptocurrency and blockchain, they're similar but not the same. Cryptocurrency is a subset of the blockchain's ecosystem. Blockchain is a very big and large ecosystem that can empower a lot of people across the globe. The worst possible example that we can use would be NFTs, right? JPEGs digitized and then sold for a ridiculous amount of money, and because that's always a fads and fashion thing where whoever comes in first makes the money and then they flip it. That's existed not just in the blockchain space and the crypto space, they've done it for decades now, right? So then the question becomes, okay, you're probably asking me, what now, right? Why, how will blockchain benefit the rest of the world? Let's take an example. The reason why I'm supportive of this is because a lot of social good can come out from blockchain. So there is an organization called cello.org, right? They basically have a platform that allows project owners to come onto their platform, and then they help fund them. What are the examples of these project owners? There's one called Plastic, PLASTIK.io if I'm not mistaken. They basically collect money through the blockchain. You buy their tokens and you're basically funding them, collecting plastic waste from the ocean in the kilos or thousands of kilos, and they have a social report they give to you. You're basically funding a socially driven enterprise, right? Another example of this would be, let's take a look at the world. How many people of us have eczema, for example, or some form of skin disease, a complication with our skin? If you look at the subset of the population of each country, a very small subset of each country has this problem. So a lot of the resources don't necessarily go to the R&D related to this as a priority. But with blockchain, you can have a group of people that comes in that have the same problem, that funds a Web3 project owner to do R&D and research specifically targeting skin diseases. So the global population would be 20%, maybe 10%. But if you look at it spread across each country, it's a very small number. So the countries themselves don't necessarily have the initiative to want to do this and put money there. But when collectively everyone comes together, this can be done very easily. Of course, then the question becomes, but why can't we just do this with a traditional Web2 organization? We can't, because Web3 facilitates cross-border funding and transfer of cash as quick as lightning, which is why the funding of these projects and R&D can then be leased out or sold to organizations that can create the necessarily health, pharmaceutical essentials you need to deal with your issues, right? Versus waiting for the R&D to come out when the pharma companies decide this is something we do. Now, the pharma companies is a discussion and debate on its own, but that's a use case, right? Another use case in Malaysia would be you have a very famous movement that moved that took shape during the pandemic. It was called Kita Jaga, right? Kita Jaga is led by this guy named Reza Razali. I was fortunate enough to be in the class where Professor Melati Nungsari brought him in as a speaker, and we connected with him, and I know I've befriended him after that because I truly believe in the social impact he's working on. They moved to the blockchain and they started selling NFTs as a way to fund their project and the platform to further develop. So there's a good usage of the NFT versus an NFT of a picture of an ape just because you can, right? It's about weighing the cost of not using this technology versus using it and having that social impact and that penetration that you need. Yeah.
Technology for good. Now, I need you to push a little because there will be some people that want to put the contrarian view.
Yeah.
Because blockchain cannot be materialized, that you put your money but you will not see the money back, or because where can you actually change your fiat, or there are places like the certain bazaars that you need still to pay in cash and they will not accept. How can you answer those doubts?
Oh, very simple. Technology evolves and it improves over time. An example of this would be if anyone feels that, so there are multiple parts to this, right? I'll deal first with the fact that what's the adoption like? Digital wallets and e-wallets had to be adopted, right? And initially it was cash, and people who didn't receive cash, or we had to pay with a card or digital payments, we had distrust for it. Like, oh, someone might steal my details, my cards, my PIN number, and then rob me from the bank or charge my credit card. That happens, but we've instituted, or there have been ways to ensure that there is protection for a consumer, right? So that's one thing. Number two, let's talk about cryptocurrency. So I probably agree with many of the viewers who may disagree with the usage of cryptocurrency, because I feel like it's fiat on fiat, right? There's nothing really backing it except the fact that someone else wants to buy it, and that's why there's value. So as an investor, when you invest in something like this, you're a retail investor. You must be aware of what you're investing in. For example, if I'm investing in a property, I know that this property can be used for me to stay in, or if I have a different property, I can rent it out or lease it out to someone to either use it as an office space or for someone to stay there. So there is a productive income that comes about from it. So this is 101 with regards to wealth management and expansion, right? So the question then becomes, if you have money which is fiat, which is backed by nothing at this point, only the GDP of a country, what you have then is a choice. Keep the money in your bank, let inflation eat away at it, or invest it in a real world asset, and then ensure that the real world asset can generate more fiat for you that equalizes the loss of your money from the inflation. Cryptocurrency is not a solution for that. It was deemed as one of those solutions. What's beneficial there is the technology behind it. It's the fact that blockchain and distributed ledger technology allows people to track information from one hash to another. So in simple terms, you know where the money comes from, you know where it's going, and you can't hack it. And if someone hacks it, it is automatically fixed because all the other information around it saying this is not the data that was there. So it self-corrects. That's the technology you're investing in. So a lot of people just say, because it's on this technology, maybe I buy the crypto asset, right? If you were to buy a crypto asset, I've invested in crypto assets too. Not because I was an enthusiast of cryptocurrency, but mostly because I understood that I needed to understand the landscape. So I put a couple of thousand ringgit in there, and obviously crypto winter came and I lost. But I didn't see it as a loss. I saw it as a gain because I understood what it was. So if you're investing in a project that allows other projects to come on board, and these projects are the socially driven ones that I gave examples for earlier, then you're holding on to tokens because you believe in that specific project itself. So let's say Fabian is Polygon and I am XYZ. I'm coming onto Polygon's blockchain. Polygon invests in making sure that projects come on board. And if I can do good on the Polygon blockchain, you perhaps want to invest. It's sort of like a share, but that's not really a share, right? So then it's okay. But if it's just something they call, mind my language for this, but it's across the board, they call it shitcoins, right? So there's
like
nothing.
the Shiba Inus, like the Tort Dog, which are the other ones?
DogeCoin is one, but it's popular.
Come on, dude. Don't mess with Dogecoin.
You have DogeCoin on you, huh?
Yeah.
The biggest prank I thought was the one where Elon Musk changed the Twitter.
Oh yeah, I was so happy when I saw that. I was like, oh look at that, they changed the icon. It was for 1 or 2 days, but it was lovely.
So for those of you who don't, many years ago, someone tweeted Elon Musk and said, hey, why don't you buy Twitter and change its logo to, Shiba Inu dog,
The Dogecoin.
the Dogecoin, right? And he did it for April's Fool. So that's sort of like the internal joke, but quite public now. But yes, coming back to these scrap coins, the projects, there's so many projects out there, they don't make sense, right? It's like they know they can raise money and they can run away with it. There's a specific term for this called rug pull, right? They pull the rug.
One of those quintessential examples has been Logan Paul.
Yeah, there we go.
And there is a channel dedicated for that called Coffeezilla by Stephen. Shout out to you, man. Congratulations on being with the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. As a detective, he was able to not only see the technicality, but also how people was affected and how to compensate them by calling these bad actors that bring shame to the industry, because in the end it's an industry.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, the early stages of cryptocurrency, especially what we saw last year with FTX meltdown and similar cases before that, the problem is the same with the banking system previously. It's liquidity. They didn't have it, right? They were giving out their tokens and they were giving out loans with money they didn't have, and that's a banking issue. That's a financial system issue that have regulators up in the air, because they've dealt with this with banks, but they have not dealt with it in the regulatory space for cryptocurrency, right? And what we saw last year was a natural conclusion of how correction happens, right? So those who came in earlier and sold their coins, well, I guess kudos to you, well done. But money come easy, money go easy, right? So
easy come, easy go.
Easy come, easy go. Yeah. So if you have these projects, I mean, Sam Bankman was the guy trying to bail out people the year before. I saw him in Singapore FinTech Festival.
And the so-called effective altruist.
Yeah, right.
Come on,
and
nobody believes that.
I don't want to go as far as to maybe he wanted to do fraud, but I'll leave it as is. The point I'm trying to make is that there is risk in new technology. The question you need to ask are basically two. One, do I understand the technology? And number two, do I understand enough to invest in it, right? So I took a long time to understand it. Some of my projects, one of them was with Stashaway. So we used to report to the managing director of the Malaysian Stashaway outfit. His name is Wong Wai Ken. So in our private conversations, we would chat about cryptocurrency, and I would be like, no, it's fake, it's not real. And it's like, no, you don't understand it. And then I realized that I didn't, and I had to go and understand it better. So then I went on this journey of trying to learn about it. How many people here know about cryptocurrency but has actually read Bitcoin's white paper?
I read that one.
Yeah, right. So a lot of people have not. A lot of people who have Web3 projects that have raised have not read that, right? That paper is specifically about empowering people beyond the current financial system. Is using technology for the advantage of the people, I guess, right? It's a root of decentralized finance, decentralization. But with decentralization comes the problems of, can we trust projects? Can we trust that this is going to happen? So I think ultimately it's about reading the white paper and then engaging with the people that you're reading about and engaging with the projects that you're reading about. Someone can come up and tell me that no one's done this before, no one's ever had bad things to say about our project, but someone can easily come up and say like, I don't trust you, I don't think you can open an Islamic bank on the blockchain, who are you? Like, are you a central banker? Do you have experience in the finance space? The answer to both those questions is no and no, but I know how to run a startup and I know how to come up with ideas and build it very well. You need to work together with different people. Sometimes solutions come from people who are not in the industry. Sometimes solutions, the best ones, come from people who are not there and they are from the outside and they observe, right? So this is an opportunity for us and for all of you who's listening to actually go back and take a look at what projects are out there and read up on it, right? One place that you can go and have a laugh while also seeing some really good projects is a place called ICO Drop, right? A lot of projects list there to raise funds. I've gone through projects with raised millions that don't make sense. And you're wondering, I have such a great project. How come these guys are raising $5 million, right? I think I probably can too. That self-accountability as an investor and someone learning has to be there. Now, the other parts of blockchain obviously is the fact that you can track goods. You're basically pushing all these big brands to be more sustainable, and at the same time, you can hold them accountable because the blockchain is about tracking from point A to the product that reaches your table at home. And of course, all these big brands have jumped on the bandwagon of obviously buying either Bitcoin or some form of NFT and trying to go into the metaverse because some consultant basically told them that, oh, there's space here, right?
I would like to make a small pause to check if I can put the lights because for some reason the other lights are still not working. So
Okay.
let me go back right now. Let me see if I can put this on. And yeah, I guess that can work.
You got my face right?
Yeah, that can work.
Okay.
Yes, they can work in the meantime until the lights are up because we want to capture also the video. Now, the point that we want to discuss was all those projects that all of a sudden were saying, yeah, barely has any idea and they were raising $5 million. They're not competitive anymore.
Yeah, they take the money, they run away with it. And that's the thing with Web3 projects, right? The ICO or IDO is like an IPO for a traditional company. They convince the public that they should have their shares be bought after they've shown a track record of success in their P&L across 10 years. But in the Web3 space, it's the other way around. You're empowering people to come up with solutions and ideas ahead of time, and you're funding them. So there will be times where you put your money into projects that maybe don't work out. And that happens even in the traditional businesses, right? So I guess it's about making sure that you understand the project well and then diversifying where your money goes. So if you think that there are 5 projects that you like, don't put all your money in one project. Put it into several projects and see which one will yield you something of benefit.
That's what a VC usually thinks about, like an angel investor to hedge their risk in a portfolio management.
Yeah, and this isn't something that just VC should do. People should do it too. Like we should do it, right? I think this isn't something that we need to go to business school just to learn. I think children should already start learning this about making sure that all your eggs are not in one basket. Be innovative. Find ideas out there that you want to support. And sometimes it's not even about putting $1 million. Sometimes it's just talking to a founder and saying, hey, I don't have a lot of money. I can put in 1,000 ringgit, but if you want, I can try to bring other people for you to speak, and then you support the project if you believe in it, right?
A
That's how
crowdfunding.
yeah. So I'll go a little bit into Commodi-T, right? So there are a couple of things that we want to do. So obviously the first thing is that when you buy, so it was a bit of a struggle, and we took some time because we want to be not just Sharia compliant, we want to be halal and tayyiban. What does that mean? There are two different,
what does it mean? Yeah.
two different things, right? So Sharia compliant means that it's permissible. You can do it. Halal and tayyiban is a level above where it is the best thing that you can do, right? So for example, not drinking alcohol as a Muslim for me is Sharia compliant for me. I don't do something that is haram. But me not going or getting close to a bar is halal and tayyiban because I'm putting myself in a space that is not good for me, even though I don't drink. If I don't drink, it's okay. But it's better not to be there at all. Apply this concept to what we're trying to do. We could have easily taken a loan from a bank, personal loan, maybe 2-3 of us take the money, about 15,000-20,000 ringgit, and then put into the development of the stable coin that we have. Now for all of you who keep hearing the word stablecoin is something where it's a crypto asset that is pegged to something that is real, right? The value of the coin is pegged to a real world asset. Right?
Like the Binance dollar that is a stable coin because it's correlated to one American dollar.
Correct. However, Binance dollar and USDT are fiat on fiat because US dollar also is fiat, right? The best example would be one commodity gold token is equivalent to 1 gram of gold, right? So a little bit of peek into our project there. So what are we doing with this, right? So we had to find a way that we didn't just collect donation where people feel, oh, the money is going in there, they may run away with it. So we decided that the best way to do it would be to give out shares. Because if we are trying to create a Islamic financial model and use that, we need to share the risk. We need to make sure that they are aware and they can wind down the company if we don't do well, right? So we will start with our IDO, which is commodity shares, and we will sell it for $1. Of course, it's fiat there, but you buy the shares and you are a shareholder. A lot of it is going to be done on a decentralized exchange. So KYC is necessary for people who want to claim their share. So you can own the share, but you are not a shareholder that votes unless you KYC with us. That is the part where we want to make sure that we are in line with the regulator. So we finally figured out how to raise the money and funding in a halal way, in a Sharia compliant way, and to ensure that people feel that there is recourse, legal recourse there. The stable coin, however, is the product, right? So if we were to tell you that you could buy one token that corresponds to 1 gram of gold and it exists, it's in the vault of the party that you're buying from, you would feel a lot more comfortable knowing that it's not in my house, right? It's actually with PAM Swiss or with Istanbul Gold Refinery. It's there, and at any time when you want to withdraw it, you can, because it's your gold and it exists. It's already been ring fenced. I cannot say it's not there. On the blockchain, you will have a token that correlates directly to a serial number in the vault, and that's something that isn't done a lot at this point. They've attempted it. Tax Gold, for example, has attempted it. Tether Gold has attempted it, but the buy-in is too high. It's 1 billion. It's 1 kilo.
This also reminds me the concept that Binance wanted to drop, and other places like OKX has been also applying. Proof of reserves.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about it?
Proof of reserve is the fundamental step that a lot of these Web3 companies and projects have to ensure exists, or else they have nothing in their bank account. The proof of reserve for us is that we're like a bank that facilitates peer-to-peer financing, right? Well, I'll get to that later. So at the onset, your gold, there's proof that it exists. So I cannot say that you don't have the gold. So if we go bankrupt and we, one day we're like, what, I'm tired of this, I don't want to do this anymore, and we wind down, the platform is still there and you can withdraw the gold directly from the vault because it's yours, right? But what do we do with that then? Obviously, we don't want people to just invest in gold and then keep it there. The reason why investment into a commodity like gold makes sense is because it has an inverted relationship with the currency that we have now. The higher the inflation, the more money you need to buy 1 gram of gold. So if you already have the gold, it's worth more, right? So what happens then? If you leave it just as an investment asset, it will accrue its dividends over time. For example, to do this, I spent a year tracking my gold investments last year, and I made 16% return if I were to liquidate after that. I mean, a good trader that focuses only on the stock exchange perhaps makes about 13 to 15%. This is a safe asset I invested in, and it worked out. And by the way, I spent quite a bit of money because when you buy 1 gram of gold, there is a cost to make the 1 gram of gold. So imagine if it was digital gold only. Some companies do that. They just sell digital gold, and when you want to take it out, you will have to pay an additional cost to mint that 1 gram of gold. Yeah, so you actually pay in gold. It hurts you because you want to pay in fiat, but you have to pay in gold. So there was a business in Malaysia that was operating called Hello Gold, right? It shuttered their customer-facing business earlier this year, their B2C business, because there just isn't enough of an influx of people buying gold. That's how I was investing in it. But I had to buy a gold portion that's part of a bigger bullion, and I thought that was messed up because it's very difficult. And if it's a kilo and everyone buys 1 gram, 1,000 people own that bullion bar, and you have to break it up, right? So then I thought, how do I make this accessible? Peg the stable coin to 1 gram of gold. So every CTG token, commodity gold token you have, commodity gold currency you have 1 gram of gold. Now what comes after that? You will accrue your benefits of just keeping the gold, but we want you to invest it further. So we are creating a platform where the next step is to use your gold so that you can purchase equity in up and coming projects, not just Web3 but also other projects, using gold. So that person gets a loan in grams of gold, and they return your returns in grams of gold, right? Then we also want to allow people to use that gold that they have to fund social projects where the return is a social return on investment rather than a return on investment. So 5 grams of your gold has gone into a pool of 100 grams or 200 grams of gold that has led towards 3,000 students having laptops to do their assignments, and we want to make sure there are social reports on what and how these students are doing, what project they're working on, what are the benefits of that sort of social investment. And the last one, of course, is debt financing. In Islam, we don't want to We don't want banks to have a lot of debt financing, but that's because it's a bank itself. But if it's peer-to-peer lending, you are loaning gold to someone to purchase a home. We've done the math. If you buy $1 million house, 4% of interest, you're paying millions more. But if you just pay the value of gold, assuming the value of gold increases at a steady increment over the next 15 years, you pay 700,000 more, and it's not interest. It's the value of the gold over the period of time versus 3.8 or I think about 2.9 million, something like that. I can't recall the number, but we did it. So it's a lot of savings, and it's not crippling. A lot of people would say that, yeah, but the price of gold goes up, and then I have to pay more. I borrowed gold at a cheaper price, but then now I have to pay a lot more. Well, yes, that's the risk of a real world asset. If you have a real world asset, when you buy the house as a second purchase, a person buying a house the second time, the house was bought at 400,000, you're buying it at 500,000, right? So there's a second-hand cost to how that works. So that's sort of the idea and where we want to go with it, and we want to empower people to assist others in financing responsibly, equitably, and in a manner where things that they're helping them with, there's something real behind it all. Yeah.
This is powerful, and this is so aspirational. It has to come to fruition very soon. I
Inshallah.
wish that Sanaville Investment can hear about that and put some dollars, because you heard that they disclosed a list of the LPs right there in Saudi Arabia, and it's like, now we have money, we see, hey, put the money to work. And this idea should not be only an idea; it should be something that can start making impact to a lot of people around, not only in Southeast Asia but around the world.
Yeah. I thank you for your kind words. We're working hard on this. VC is a conversation that's a bit tricky. VCs they have one job. They need to make money for the clients that put in money. Initially, we wanted to go down the route of VC, and then we didn't want to, because we didn't want the VCs to own a global bank. We wanted the people to own the global bank. Of course, we are equity partners, right? The nature of how Web3 projects work now is that you buy their tokens, but you're not shareholders. You just own their tokens, and they own the project 100% anyways. We are willing to give out that equity. We're trying to raise about, our soft cap is about 3.5 million, our IDO is about 5, our hard cap is about 7.5 if I'm not mistaken, and we're looking at about 8% to about 15% of equity we want to give out. We value this high, and of course the age-old problem of valuations. This is not a valuation of just an idea. The only reason we haven't done the stablecoin is because we need to fundraise properly with the IDO to build the stablecoin. If we were to build a stablecoin by taking a loan, I am taking it from a financial system that already has interest and riba, which really undercuts the principle of what we're trying to do. So we want to make sure A to Z we are doing our best to mitigate anything that can be seen as non-halal, not halalan tayyiban, and borderline Sharia compliant. We don't want to be there. We want to be at the top spectrum of that.
Hey, we have light.
Yeah.
Let me put the light off right here to save more battery.
Okay.
It was beautiful because the moment that you finish the pitch, you got the light.
Thank you, God.
How do you say is inshallah? When you say thanks to God?
Thanks to God is Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I mean, this is way applicable right now.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The way of the VCs is usually to make money. And how many VCs are out there that really want to make a social impact? And how many of those are really want to not only make an impact for their community, but communities that are far away from where they are, given right now 2023? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, if any one of you are interested in, and anyone who's in VC, or if you are in a VC and you're looking for a project that's going to change the world, this is it. So we look forward to your support, and if it's not financial support in the sense of buying our coins or our tokens during the IDO, connect us with people. We'll be happy to speak to people.
I can imagine Jason Calacanis or Chamapa de Happy Tilla are going to be saying good things, whatever.
Anderson Horowitz.
That's true. Now, given that we have been discussing many projects, through your MBA, you got a chance to travel many places.
Not many. I remember we were the ones that were stuck here.
So what about that place, called Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
You were in a different time.
Yeah.
It was February, and you saw the Lake Charles full of ice.
Yeah, I didn't see the lake. It was just ice, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so for many students, MIT is part of the program that is probably the best experience they have. Unfortunately, mine wasn't the best of experiences. There were multiple reasons for this, right? The first reason was because it was dead in winter, and although I am a bit of a polar bear at home and I can handle being in a 20 Celsius, 18 Celsius throughout the whole day, minus 20 is just people shouldn't live in these environments basically, right? But it was a colossal cosmic joke because every time we wanted to go out for the weekend, the Arctic winds would come and it would be 2 meters of snow. I was able to get out of Boston for one weekend to Washington with Raziman, Saiful and Azmi, because I've been to Washington before and I was sort of a bit of a tour guide, but it was still quite kind of cold there. But generally it was too cold in Boston, so it was very much a struggle for me to go out. I probably had that sort of seasonal depression struggle there. I took quite a number of my classes online instead of going to class, and it was also the time where they just opened up and everyone had to wear masks, and the Omicron wave was just hitting, so a lot of our classmates got sick. They went to class, they got sick through the ports of entry, like New York, California, Los Angeles, because at the airport, that's when they picked it up. And they came to class. I think about 70% of the class got COVID at that time. I didn't, but different kind.
Welcome to the club again, man.
We probably all got it, but we just probably weren't diagnosed properly with it,
We will never know.
We will never know, yeah. But we got our jabs, so yeah. So that was the first thing. And then the second one was that Malaysia has a difficult system with the My Sejahtera app. It was tough to get the vaccination ahead of time, but we got our first the necessary doses to go to Boston, and then upon arrival, CDC's rule was that I basically had a month after Boston, only then I would need the jab. So I didn't want to do the jab in Boston because I would have to carry 2 different apps to have the documentation, and that was exactly what I was avoiding. And then when I got there, CDC brought it down from 6 months to 5 months between the first jab and the second jab, if I'm not mistaken. So on the third day of Boston's MIT experience, I got locked out of MIT because I couldn't access the facilities anymore. I had to go get the second jab and only then get access again. And I was a bit unwell for a few days because of the jab, so it sort of compounded, right? And another thing was that if you already haven't already realized, I have sort of like a Middle Eastern looking face. I mixed, and in all intents and purposes, I would fit the profile of someone that would be on their list in the immigration. So upon arrival in the port of entry in Boston, I was interrogated, basically interviewed. I would like to use the word interrogated because that's how I felt, for about 4 to 6 hours somewhere there, and I think I had about 6 interviews. And you think that
Sounds like a Mackenzie hiding.
I would appreciate it if I got the job offer after that, but no, it wasn't. I felt like I failed the job application they thought I was applying for, right? Which was being a threat. So the thing is, in Dubai, I already got flagged. I got the SSSS, the quadruple S. Usually they will flag you there, and then you will go down, they'll do the gunshot residue on you, explosive residue test on you, and it was a little bit embarrassing because it was in front of everyone in front of the escalator, so I already felt kind of a bit irked about it. Then when I arrived, this 6-hour thing happened, and in my life I've never been put in a position where I felt like you try to tick the other boxes where, hey, actually I'm here to study, I'm not engaging with any extremist agenda and stuff like that, but it somehow or rather the other list was more important for them. So some people tell me it's entirely random, but it doesn't feel random when it only happens to you everywhere you go, by the way.
Yeah.
And after that, I came out, I sat down, I think for about 15 minutes I cried because it felt really disingenuous. It also felt I felt very naked, in the process, and it was a very bad experience. So I was conflating that experience with the Boston MIT experience. After 2 weeks, I sort of like, it was a little bit better. I started to enjoy some of the classes, especially the innovation class. The finance classes were just too heavy. I think it was heavy for everyone there. So it was sort of like a choice I had to make. So throughout the MBA journey, I chose a glass half full, right, in how I approach ASB. ASB is not perfect. ASB is a work in progress. It is a startup, and there are mistakes that will happen. There are things that will happen, and I'm not just saying this because I currently work as staff here. As a student and alumni, also previously a co-president for a brief stint, you have a choice, and you need to choose whether you want to make it a glass half full or half empty experience. Some people, they make choices and it's half glass empty, right? So in MIT, it was half empty for me. It was too many things going on for me, so it was difficult. But if you put the conversation only aside to how was the classes, was it world class? Hell yes. It's something that you will never forget. The lecturers, the quality of the lectures, the lecturers, the kind of conversations and discussions you have, conversations that will blow your mind, and it really gets you thinking about, I perhaps am not as smart as I think I am. And then the lecturers assure you, no, you're actually as smart as you think you are. You just need to maintain that humility, and that's how you learn more. And it's pretty clear there, And when you are in MIT, I don't know how else to explain it. It's sort of like you want to come back, you want to be here again. And I have plans to go back there in the future, either there or Harvard. But you've gone to MIT, you're going to MIT after this, And the reality is that experience for many students before was very positive. For me, it was sort of like a 50-50, right? For me, what I was looking forward to was Dubai, because I had prepped for about 6 months in trying to meet people, and I had a very successful stint in Dubai. Met almost 20 different people in the span of a week, from COOs to founders to I wouldn't say low-level associates. It's sort of like the people on the ground doing the work, right? Just to understand how the organizations were working like. That's what I was really keen on, actually.
That's wonderful, because it offsets the experience that was so versus another one that you prep for and you got the outcomes. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And yeah, MIT can be good for some and can be not good for others. In the end, it's what you get from that and how you can carry on and use those piece of knowledge on your favor. Now, given that everybody has life, we are recording this in time of Ramadan, you are about to go to Iftar.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you something that many people have been asking. I guess we have time first to ask about that project in Bangkok.
That parade.
That project in Bangkok.
Oh, project.
Yeah, and what happened there?
Which project?
The NFT project.
The NFT project. Last I checked, it's ongoing. So for those of you who don't know, it was a project with Ananda Development. They were a host there. The project was about tokenizing luxury assets, right? They had an idea to either tokenize yachts,
The boats.
the boats on water, and then the other one was their properties, their assets, because Ananda Development is actually a real estate sort of big mogul there, right? And they opted into the luxury yachts. We tried to propose the tokenization of the spaces because that's their biggest portfolio and it made more sense. But they wanted to attempt something new with the yachts. So according to them, they have tokenized it already. They are already working. It's in motion, right? So it's a successful project for them, as in successful that it has launched. Whether it's successful or not, that really depends on whether or not they listen to our advice and use the forecasting that we gave them and go about doing what we recommended. Or perhaps if they didn't and they had something better that they figured out, I hope it worked out in their favor. But I kind of found it was a bit of a debate internally for me also, because I did my first action learning with Mudah. It was e-commerce. So it's fast moving. It's my first semester with some of my teammates. And we all know first semester, your teammates and all, you don't necessarily gel very well. For those of you who did gel very well, kudos to you. Most of us don't. That's when we have loggerheads, we fight and whatnot. And I will be the first to say that I had issues with mine and I had to learn from my own issues there. Then I went to the second action learning, which was Stashaway. So I was slowly moving to the FinTech, right? FinTech space. And then I did Stashaway and I was like, you know what, I'm interested in blockchain. Then I did another development project, which was tokenizing assets. So if you all are interested to take a look about, related to this, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Blue Lagoon. That's the name of the partner that they had in Hanyai, I think. Yeah, Hanyai or Phuket, I think. Yeah. So you can probably take a look there. So my dilemma was very clear. It seems like a project for spoiled kids. You know, everyone looks rich and they want to book a space and they want to go out on a yacht and a cruise and chill out. That's a bias obviously that I have. It's not really a misplaced bias. A lot of people think the same way too, but that's a thing with business students and business schools. We need to be able to say that this is a project that if it didn't happen, it didn't matter. But a lot of us are told that it's a different market. It's a market segment. So I think there is more value in tokenizing their real world assets in property. It doesn't have to be another development. If there was another party that would have done it for spaces, they would have been more productive in the outcome, for a lot more people to come and create and collaborate. Now that's not saying that you cannot come and create and collaborate on a boat. You can, but how many people do that, right? Yeah. So the dilemma was like, am I creating a project or working on a project for spoiled rich kids? Because the reality was, the people who are going to spend money on this, it was luxurious. It was going to be expensive. It was going to be people who just made money in the crypto space, or people who came from the traditional backgrounds, father, mother, companies own steels and real estate development and whatnot, and then they now are putting money into new assets. So I had to sort of put that aside and try to figure out, it's okay, this is a project, you're learning for it, you're learning about it, and this will be beneficial for the project you want to work on, which eventually you did, because it sort of set the tone of the kind of approach and ethos of why we are doing or working the project that we're working on now, which is Commodi-T. It's not for a subset, it's for everyone, right? So sometimes in order to learn the lesson, you need to go through a difficult one for you to learn the lesson in retrospect, right? So for all of you who are doing action learning projects, who are students of ASB, prospects of ASB, you want to take projects that can sort of stretch you a little bit, but at the same time be very clear with your teammates that if you don't know something, leverage off each other's strengths, right? And for those of you who are, I use this word loosely, alphas, right? And you want to dictate and do this and do that, I'll be the first to say that my first semester, I made a mistake thinking that I should be that. And the lesson was learned, and the biggest lesson I learned was you can learn a lot from people around you when you just let them step forward, right? That requires trust.
That's absolutely right. It's like, hey, it's not about starting things, it's about closing the deal. It's all
Also
about
the
closing
process, right? Yeah, the process.
Also the process.
Yeah.
Now, there will be a lot of people watching this, and there are also going to be young Faisals watching this.
Okay.
So, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, number one is don't miss your prayers. Number two, verify before you speak. I've made multiple mistakes where I assumed that something and actually it wasn't the case. And when I got older and where I am now, I give the benefit of doubt to people too, because they made the same mistake with me, but I'm forgiving because I realized that there's a lesson they need to learn there. Don't make them feel bad, right? The third one is stay true to your principles. You stayed true to your principles for a very long time. They've built you, they've sustained you, they have brought you to a position where you've been able to bring others together. So your principles and your values is not something you should compromise on. And this all comes from a very important Islamic concept, right? So I'll briefly talk about it. So there is something called ihsan. So for a Muslim, when you become Muslim, the word is Islam. You take on Islam, so you are Muslim. And then when you practice your faith and you believe in the faith, it is what you call iman, which is then a word that a Muslim that's practicing is called mu'min, right? Then there's a highest level, right? These are the standards and levels, not to denigrate others and say you are down here. It is how do we get here because it's closer to God. That's what we want to be at. This level is called ihsan. So if you're a Muslim that practices it, it's called muhsin, right? There's a very famous Malay movie by I can't remember her name. It's called Muhsin. Check it out. When I remember the name later, I'll let you know. And ihsan here, according to Islamic scholars, is a level of submission to a higher cause that goes beyond you observing me. It simply means do something knowing that Allah is watching you. And if you cannot feel or if you cannot see that Allah is watching you, know that He is. So wherever you are, it is about doing the best that you can and bringing the best of your abilities to something. So the advice to my younger self is adopt this earlier. When I was much younger, it was was a lot harder for me to practice my faith because I was a young orphan. My mom and dad passed away when I was very young, 12 years old and 17 or 16 years old. I grew up with my sisters. So you get angry at the world, you get angry at other people, you get angry at God for whatever reason. I took my mom too early, people don't understand me, this and that. You are just misunderstood. In fact, for many people talked to me before and said there was a point in time I realized people just didn't understand me, right? And the lesson learned there was that the faith is necessary in the things you want to do. Whether you're Muslim or whether you're Christian or whether you don't believe in God, faith in doing the best that you can is something that should be a guiding principle, right? This will impact everything you do, the quality of your work, the way you speak to people, the way you make people feel about you when they leave the conversation with you, and most importantly, how you feel about yourself. Because if you don't feel happy with the level of commitment you have to yourself or the comfort level you have with your thoughts, your mind, and the things you say and your behavior, then you can kiss goodbye other people being comfortable looking at you, engaging in you. So the core is very important. For me, the core is my faith, right? And I'm always value driven and people driven. I want to help others. I want to help people, and all my projects start with the ethos of that. For the NGO, it's about elevating and the upliftment of students across Malaysia in their thinking and communication skills. For Malaysia, I didn't get to speak a little bit about this earlier, but it's about getting vulnerable youth to become not vulnerable and then empowering them. And this has a spin-off towards improving the standards of leadership in Malaysia in the future. We want to change the gods of our youth in Malaysia. Right now, they are the politicians. The first person who gives you 50 ringgit is your god. I want to change that. We want the youth to feel like they can earn that 50 ringgit without having to go and succumb to poor political ideology, and be sustainable in the approach in how they engage other people in politics. It's also about helping the youth. And when it comes to Commodi-T, that is about freeing people from the shackles of interest, making sure that they are able to invest and at the same time steadily feel comfortable that there's something real in hand rather than something they don't understand. Because that's the biggest problem with investments. A lot of people don't make money because they don't understand the investments. And if I can bring Commodi-T to everyone and let them feel like it is something easy to understand, then financially you are safe. The part of youth, we are empowering them. The part of children is a feeder towards making them better thinkers, and eventually better voters, better thinkers in the aspect of politics and choosing your leaders in Malaysia. There's this old saying, right? People deserve the leaders that they have because of the kind of leaders they allow to come into power. There is a truth to that, and there is also a lie to that. The truth is you get what you see there because people are voting based on what they understand. The lie is that people think that the people who are saying this think that the people who are voting for these leaders could have chosen any other different party. They couldn't. It's because the system is designed that way. We need to break that system. So I'm all for breaking systems to make it better. I'm all for making sure that we do it in a sustainable and responsible way. Yeah. These are all the things I would sit down and talk to myself about when I was much younger. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I cannot find a better way to close the episode. How people can find you?
Well, there are several ways. You can email me at my alumni email address, sheikh.shah at mda2022 at asb.edu.my. I know it's a mouthful. I'll probably put it in the caption below. My personal email is also good. Check out my LinkedIn profile. I have a work number that you can message me on WhatsApp. I have Telegram also. I'm not very active on Twitter. I read a lot of stuff on Twitter only recently, but these are all the places I'm on. So LinkedIn, personal contact details, email.
Faisal, I really enjoyed talking with you today. I really
you for
learned a
that.
lot. So I hope we can meet again. And for people out there, stay safe and see you when I see you. Bye.
Thank you for your time. Thank you guys for listening to us.
Bye. All right.